The Vorsham hierarchy's conquest fleet materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system with the confidence of predators circling wounded prey. 647 warships, their hulls adorned with conquest marks from 17 subjugated worlds, began their approach vector toward the blue planet hanging vulnerable in the void. Warmaster Horvex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, watching tactical displays that showed Earth's pathetic defenses with barely concealed contempt. Transmission incoming from the human homeworld, his communications officer announced. Let them beg, Horvex replied, mandibles clicking in amusement. They've had 43 years to accept their place in the galaxy. They chose defiance. The Council's ban had been absolute. After humanity's discovery of faster-than-light travel, after their first violent border disputes with neighboring species, the Galactic Council had issued the ultimatum: dismantle all military spacecraft, submit to Council oversight, or face total economic isolation. Humanity had complied. Every scout ship had watched them decommission their fleet, reduce their orbital defense network to civilian monitoring stations. The humans had spent 4 decades as a neutered species, forbidden from building warships, restricted to commercial vessels and scientific platforms. Perfect prey. Warmaster, the Human Defense Coordinator is responding to our demands, the communications officer said. Horvex gestured lazily. Display it. The view screen shifted to show a woman in a plain gray uniform, her dark hair pulled back severely, her expression unervingly calm. Commander Sarah Al-Rashid sat in what appeared to be a command center, outdated by at least 3 decades based on the visible technology behind her. Warmaster Horvex, she said, her voice carrying none of the fear he expected. You're in violation of Terran space. I'm obligated to inform you that we have defensive capabilities you may not be aware of. Horvex's laughter echoed across his bridge. Your defensive capabilities? We've monitored your compliance with the Council ban for 43 years. Your orbital stations are civilian infrastructure. Your spacecraft are mining vessels and cargo haulers. You have no military fleet. He leaned forward. Surrender now, and your casualties will be minimal. Resist, and we will take what we want from the ashes. Something flickered in Al-Rashid's eyes. Not fear. Something else entirely. Acknowledged, she said simply. You've been warned. The transmission ended. Arrogant vermin, Horvex muttered. Begin the assault. Target their orbital stations first. I want them watching their infrastructure burn before we land ground forces. The Vorsham fleet advanced in textbook formation, dreadnoughts at the center, destroyers flanking, corvette screens on the perimeter. Horvex had conquered defended worlds before. This would be easier than most. The humans had 23 orbital stations scattered across high and low orbit. No shields visible on scans. No weapons ports that registered as military grade. Just civilian platforms with power signatures consistent with communications arrays and docking facilities. The first salvo of plasma missiles launched from his forward destroyers, brilliant streaks of superheated death crossing the distance at 0.7 light speed. Impact in 14 seconds. Warmaster, his sensor officer said, mandibles twitching with uncertainty. The human stations are activating something. Power signatures spiking across all platforms. Civilian shields, Horvex dismissed. Inadequate for military-grade weapons. 12 seconds. On the tactical display, the human stations began moving. Not drifting. Moving with purpose, repositioning with thruster burns that suggested far more sophisticated propulsion than civilian infrastructure should possess. And their power signatures continued climbing, surging past anything that made sense for communication platforms. 8 seconds. Those aren't communication arrays, the sensor officer said, voice rising. Warmaster, those are. The stations opened fire. Horvex had expected point defense lasers, perhaps some outdated kinetic systems. What emerged from the supposedly civilian platforms made his blood run cold. Magnetic accelerator cannons, dozens per station, launched 100-ton tungsten penetrators at velocities that bent physics into screaming submission. The projectiles crossed the distance in heartbeats, bypassing his ship's plasma shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, like they weren't there. The first destroyer simply ceased to exist, its hull breached in 47 places simultaneously before its reactor containment failed in a miniature sun. Evasive maneuvers. Horvex roared. Return fire. All batteries. His fleet scattered, but the human stations tracked them with precision that spoke of military-grade targeting systems and processing power. More tungsten rounds tore through the void. A second destroyer lost its entire forward section. A corvette tumbled away, its engines reduced to molten slag. The Warships plasma missiles, designed to overwhelm defensive systems, found themselves intercepted by point defense networks that shouldn't exist on civilian infrastructure. Damage report. Horvex demanded. 17 ships severely damaged, 5 destroyed, his tactical officer reported, voice shaking. War Master, those stations are not civilian platforms. They're military installations disguised as commercial infrastructure. Impossible. The Council monitors. The Council monitors spacecraft construction, a new voice interrupted. Horvex spun to see Commander Al-Rashid's face on his viewscreen again, her expression now carrying the faintest hint of satisfaction. They never said anything about upgrading existing orbital stations. We've had 43 years to reinforce, rearm, and redesign every platform in Earth orbit. You're facing the most heavily fortified planetary defense network in known space. Horvex felt his confidence waver for the first time. You're in violation of Council law. Council law prohibits military spacecraft construction, Al-Rashid replied. These are stationary platforms. Technically not ships. Our lawyers were very thorough. She paused. You should also know that what you're seeing is just the outer perimeter. On his tactical display, new contacts began appearing. Not from orbit. From the asteroid belt, from Lagrange points, from positions scattered throughout the inner system. Dozens of signatures, then hundreds, all converging on his fleet's position. They're mining vessels, his sensor officer reported, scanning frantically. Ore haulers, processing ships, industrial craft. All civilian. But they were moving with military precision, forming attack formations that no civilian crew should know. And their hulls bristled with equipment that looked nothing like mining tools until Horvex understood with growing horror exactly what he was seeing. Those are mass drivers, he whispered. Industrial drilling lasers. Or processing plasma cutters. Correct, Al-Rashid confirmed, apparently monitoring his command frequency with ease. The Council banned warships. They said nothing about mining equipment. Turns out a mass driver designed to move asteroids works quite well against starship hulls. A fusion cutter built to slice through solid rock performs admirably against armor plating. Her smile was cold. We've had 43 years to develop the most advanced civilian space industry in the galaxy. Every tool designed with dual purpose. Every system tested and refined. You planned this, Horvex said. From the beginning. From the moment we detected your first scout probe entering our system 3 months ago, she said. Did you think we wouldn't notice? We've been monitoring Warships expansion for years. When your reconnaissance ship started surveying our outer planets, we knew what was coming. She leaned forward. So we prepared. Quietly. Legally. Creatively. The wave of civilian ships reached engagement range. 600 mining vessels, ore haulers, and processing platforms. Every corporate-owned spacecraft in the Terran system opened fire with tools designed to shatter asteroids and refine raw materials. Mass drivers hurled 100-meter chunks of processed metal. Industrial lasers carved through shields and armor with power meant for cutting planetary crust. Plasma systems designed to superheat or turn destroyer hulls into molten sculptures. The Vorsham fleet reeled. Horvex's carefully planned assault formation dissolved into chaos as his ships found themselves surrounded by enemies that shouldn't exist, attacked by weapons that weren't weapons, dying to tools instead of guns. All batteries, focus fire. Horvex commanded. Concentrate on the military stations. His remaining ships rallied, unleashing devastating barrages toward Earth's orbital platforms. Plasma missiles and particle beams hammered the station's shields. Actual military shields, he realized now, hidden under civilian power signatures until needed. 2 stations took critical damage, their frameworks buckling under the assault. But the cost was catastrophic. For every station wounded, the converging swarm of mining ships claimed 3 more Vorsham warships, their industrial weapons tearing through hulls with brutal efficiency. War Master, fleet status is critical, his tactical officer reported. We've lost 42 ships, another 68 severely damaged. Enemy forces are increasing. We're detecting additional signatures emerging from Earth's moon. From their moon? Horvex pulled up the long-range scans. More contacts, these ones larger, moving with the ponderous mass of heavy industrial ships. Fusion signatures consistent with deep space mining platforms. Approaching at full burn. Commander Al-Rashid appeared on his screen one more time. You wanted to know about our defensive capabilities, she said quietly. Those are our strategic reserves. Lunar Industrial Complex. 37 heavy fusion platforms, each massing 50,000 tons, each equipped with the tools necessary to crack open moons and harvest their cores. She paused, letting that sink in. The Council banned military research. So we invested everything into industrial development instead. Bigger drills. Hotter cutters. More powerful mass drivers. Her eyes were hard. Turns out there's very little difference between tools designed to dismantle asteroids and weapons designed to dismantle warships. Horvex stared at the tactical display, watching his conquest fleet being systematically dismantled by mining equipment and construction platforms. 647 warships, reduced to fewer than 400 combat-effective vessels in less than 20 minutes. Facing an enemy that shouldn't exist, using weapons that weren't weapons, fighting a military force disguised as civilian industry. Fall back, he ordered quietly. All ships, withdraw to outer system. War Master, the hierarchy will demand. The hierarchy doesn't understand what we're facing, Horvex interrupted. He watched another destroyer explode under mass driver impacts. These humans haven't just prepared. They've been planning this for 4 decades. Every system, every tool, every platform built with warfare in mind while technically complying with Council law. He felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Respect. And beneath it, fear. We need reinforcements. We need to study their tactics. We need. War Master, his sensor officer interrupted, voice tight with new alarm. Multiple massive signatures just entered the system. Extreme range, vector from outer planets. Configuration unknown. Power readings. The officer's mandibles went slack. War Master, those power readings are off our scales. On the tactical display, new contacts appeared at the edge of his sensor's maximum range. Big signatures. Moving fast. And broadcasting transponder codes that made no sense until Horvex read them twice and felt his confidence shatter completely. TCSS unyielding. TCSS relentless. TCSS vindication. TCSS sovereignty. 23 names, 23 ships that shouldn't exist. Commander Al-Rashid's smile was sharp enough to cut. I said the Council banned us from building military spacecraft. I never said we stopped building spacecraft. She gestured off-screen. Meet humanity's deep space mining fleet. 23 heavy industrial vessels, each one constructed legally and properly registered with council monitors. Civilian ships, built to prospect the outer system, process asteroids, establish mining colonies in the Kuiper Belt. The new contacts accelerated, burning toward the inner system at speeds no civilian vessel should achieve. There also, Al-Rashid continued, the most heavily armed warships ever built by human hands. 43 years of preparation. 43 years of engineering. 43 years of asking ourselves what would happen if someone decided our compliance looked like weakness. Her expression hardened. You have 60 seconds to begin retreat operations before my deep space fleet enters engagement range. After that, I cannot guarantee your survival. Horvex looked at the tactical display, at his shattered formation, at the swarm of mining ships still tearing through his forces, at the massive signatures approaching from the outer dark. He thought of the hierarchy's expectations, of the conquest marks he'd planned to add to his flagship's hull, of the easy victory he'd been promised. Full retreat, he ordered. Maximum burn. All ships, emergency acceleration. As the Vorsham fleet scattered and ran, burning toward the system's edge in desperate flight, Horvex watched the human warships, disguised as civilian miners, hidden in plain sight for 4 decades, continue their relentless approach. He'd come to conquer a defenseless species. Instead, he'd found an enemy that had turned pacifism into the deadliest trap in the galaxy. The war for Earth had just begun. And humanity had every advantage. The Vorsham retreat lasted exactly 47 seconds before Commander Al-Rashid gave the order that changed everything. All mining vessels, pursue and engage. Deep Space Fleet, intercept pattern Delta 7. Her voice carried across every human channel, calm and absolute. No survivors reached their jump point. Lieutenant Chen Wei looked up from his tactical station aboard the TCSS Unyielding, watching the massive warship's command center spring into coordinated action. Ma'am, they're scattering. Standard evasion doctrine. Makes pursuit difficult. For a conventional fleet, Al-Rashid replied. She gestured to the holographic display showing the fleeing Vorsham ship spreading across a 3 million kilometer sphere. Ensign Beak, activate the perimeter. Beak's fingers flew across her communications panel. Perimeter active. All stations responding. Across the solar system, hidden in the orbital paths of asteroids, disguised as navigation beacons, lurking in the debris fields of dead comets, humanity's final secret came online. 263 weapon platforms, each one registered with council monitors as scientific observation posts or navigation satellites, each one packed with enough firepower to cripple a destroyer. They'd been positioned over 4 decades, placed with mathematical precision, creating a spherical cage around Earth's sphere of influence. The retreating Vorsham fleet ran straight into the trap. Mass driver rounds materialized from apparently empty space. Fusion beams lanced out from asteroids that had been hollowed out and filled with military-grade generators. Missile pods, disguised as solar observation equipment, ripple-fired their payloads. The fleeing invaders found themselves caught in a 3-dimensional killing field with no safe vector. Horvex watched 3 cruisers explode in the span of 5 seconds, torn apart by weapons that had been invisible on every scan. Where are these coming from? Everywhere, Warmaster, his sensor officer reported, voice breaking. We're detecting weapons fire from coordinates previously marked as civilian infrastructure or empty space. The entire inner system is armed. On the Unyielding's command deck, Chief Engineer Kowalski allowed himself a grim smile. 43 years of placing satellites. Every probe disguised as science. Every beacon hiding a gun. They were looking for military shipyards and found nothing. Because we built our weapons in orbit and let solar drift distribute them, Al-Rashid finished. Hard to find a weapons platform when it looks like space junk and moves on natural trajectories. She studied the tactical display. Deep Space Fleet, you are weapons free. Show them what we built. The TCSS Unyielding had mass comparable to a Vorsham dreadnought, but that's where similarities ended. Disguised as a civilian mining platform for 43 years, it had been engineered from its first hull plate to be a warship masquerading as something harmless. Now it dropped the pretense. 48 magnetic accelerator cannons deployed from bays marked or processing. Point defense clusters emerged from what had been listed as sample analysis stations. And its primary weapon, a mining laser designed to cut through nickel-iron asteroids the size of mountains, swiveled toward the nearest Vorsham dreadnought. Lieutenant Chunwei had calculated the firing solution 3 times, still barely believing the numbers. Target locked. Range 60,000 kilometers. Reactor output at maximum. Fire, Al-Rashid ordered. The mining laser was rated to output sustained energy equivalent to a small star's photosphere, concentrated into a beam narrow enough to thread a needle. It had carved through asteroids for decades, reducing kilometer-wide chunks of rock to molten slag in minutes. Against a dreadnought's military armor, the effect was catastrophic. The beam struck the Vorsham flagship's shields and simply punched through. Energy designed to deflect plasma weapons and particle beams had no framework for dealing with a coherent photon stream carrying enough joules to vaporize a small moon. The dreadnought's hull lasted 3 seconds before its structural integrity failed. Internal bulkheads melted. Reactor shielding compromised. The Eternal Dominance, pride of the hierarchy's conquest fleet, broke apart like a toy in a furnace. Horvex found himself on the secondary command vessel, watching his flagship die. How is this possible? No mining equipment operates at those power levels. Human mining equipment does, Al-Rashid's voice cut across his emergency channel. You're not fighting a civilian mining fleet. You're fighting 43 years of human engineering, every advancement made with dual purpose, every improvement tested against theoretical warship specifications. She paused. Your intelligence said we complied with the council ban. They were right. We did. We just bent every other rule until it screamed. The 23 ships of humanity's deep space fleet spread across the battle space, each one a masterpiece of disguised lethality. The TCSS Relentless deployed kinetic harpoons, mining equipment designed to anchor processing ships to asteroids, and put 3 through a fleeing destroyer's engines at velocities approaching light speed. The TCSS Sovereignty used its electromagnetic trawling nets, built to capture and redirect small asteroids, to snare 2 corvettes and drag them into collision with each other. The TCSS Vindication demonstrated that fusion torches meant for controlled asteroid demolition worked equally well at melting enemy warships at close range. They're monsters, Horvex's tactical officer whispered, watching the systematic destruction. No, Horvex corrected, bitter understanding settling over him. They're miners. We're just the ore. The Vorsham fleet fragmented completely, individual ships burning at maximum acceleration toward any escape vector. The human mining swarm pursued relentlessly, hundreds of ore haulers and processing vessels coordinating like a military fleet that had drilled these maneuvers for decades. Because they had. Every commercial shipping route became a tactical formation. Every civilian navigation protocol doubled as a combat pattern. Every mining crew cross-trained as military personnel. Aboard one of the pursuing ore haulers, Captain Darius Kim of the commercial vessel Armstrong's Legacy transmitted to his crew. Load the next magazine. These mass drivers have moved 10 million tons of asteroid over 20 years. Today we earn our bonuses. His ship had been built to grab chunks of asteroid and accelerate them toward Earth orbit for processing. The Vorsham corvette fleeing ahead of him discovered that a 50-ton chunk of nickel iron, accelerated to combat velocities by a civilian mass driver, cared nothing for the distinction between ore and enemy. The impact vaporized the corvette's aft section. Confirmed kill, Kim reported. Armstrong's legacy requesting next target assignment. Assigned, Lieutenant Chen Wei responded from the unyielding. Intercept vector on your tactical display. For more runners in your sector. This was the truth the Vorsham hadn't understood. Humanity hadn't just prepared weapons. They'd built an entire civilization around the principle that everything could be weaponized. Every tool had a second purpose. Every system carried dual functionality. Every civilian had military training hidden under commercial certifications. The Council had banned warships. So humanity had built miners that happened to carry weapons. They'd banned military research. So humanity had funded industrial development that happened to have military applications. They'd banned standing military forces. So humanity had created commercial crews that happened to drill combat operations during their off hours. Horvex rallied his remaining forces, trying to form a defensive sphere. 190 ships, less than a third of his original fleet, clustered together in mutual protection doctrine. Concentrate fire on the heavy mining platforms. Those fusion lasers are their primary advantage. Destroy them and we can. The asteroid hit his formation at 0.3 light speed. Not a weapon strike. An actual asteroid, 300 meters across, redirected from its natural orbit weeks earlier, accelerated by patient application of mining thrusters, positioned perfectly for this moment. It had shown up on Vorsham sensors as natural debris, one of 10 million unremarkable rocks drifting through the inner system. The impact shattered 8 ships instantly. The shockwave scattered 16 more, breaking their defensive formation like a hammer through glass. And in the chaos, the human forces struck with coordinated precision. That was the Palace Initiative, Ensign Beak explained to a junior officer watching in horror-struck awe. Started 20 years ago. Identified 12 asteroids on trajectories that could be subtly altered. Spent 2 decades nudging them into position. The hierarchy's intelligence thought we were testing mining techniques. Her smile was cold. We were. Just not the kind they expected. The Vorsham formation collapsed. Horvex's remaining dreadnoughts tried to anchor a final defensive position, but the human forces offered no respite. Civilian mining ships worked in coordinated packs, using industrial lasers to carve through shields while ore haulers delivered kinetic strikes. The Deep Space Fleet carved through anything that remained, their fusion systems reducing ships to expanding clouds of ionized metal. Fall back to the outer marker, Horvex ordered desperately. We can regroup at. Negative, his navigation officer interrupted. War Master, our jump point is inside the human perimeter. We cannot achieve faster than light without reaching the system's edge, and that requires passing through their weapons network. The trap was complete. The Vorsham had been allowed to approach Earth, allowed to commit their forces, allowed to position themselves deep inside a sphere of human control. Every retreat vector led through weapon platforms. Every escape route had been anticipated and armed. The prey had become the predator, and the predator had forgotten to watch for ambush. This is Commander Al-Rashid to all Vorsham forces, the human coordinator's voice broadcast across all frequencies. You are surrounded. Your fleet is combat ineffective. You cannot reach your jump point. You have one option, surrender. Horvex looked at his tactical display. 143 ships remaining from 647. Scattered across space. Damaged. Running low on ammunition. Trapped inside a sphere of weapons they couldn't see until too late. His mandibles clicked in what might have been a laugh or a sob. The Council said humans were pacifists, he said quietly. Compliant. Domesticated. The Council wasn't wrong, Al-Rashid replied, and Horvex realized she'd been monitoring his command channel the entire battle. We are pacifists. We complied with every demand. We dismantled our military. We accepted their rules. Her voice hardened. We just made absolutely certain that if someone mistook compliance for weakness, they'd learn the difference. Painfully. Horvex's remaining ships continued their futile attempts at escape, but the outcome was inevitable. The human swarm tightened, mining vessels coordinating with the precision of a military force that had drilled these operations for 4 decades. The Deep Space Fleet positioned itself to cut off every remaining vector. The hidden weapons platforms created an impenetrable cage. "War Master," his communications officer said. "I'm detecting new signatures. Long range. Multiple contacts jumping in at the system's edge." Horvex felt a surge of hope. "Reinforcements?" The officer checked his displays, then his mandibles went slack. "No, War Master. It's a Council intervention fleet. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Demanding immediate ceasefire and Council arbitration." On the unyielding, Lieutenant Chen Wei looked at Commander Al-Rashid with concern. "Ma'am, Council forces are entering the system. 20 warships. They're ordering us to stand down." Al-Rashid studied the new contacts on her display, then looked at the surrounded Vorsham forces, then smiled with quiet satisfaction. "Stand down acknowledged. Cease offensive operations. Hold current positions." She opened a channel to the Council fleet. "This is Commander Sarah Al-Rashid, Terran Defense Coordinator. We welcome Council mediation. Though I should inform you that the Vorsham hierarchy initiated this engagement in violation of Council law. We merely defended our sovereign territory." Using civilian mining equipment, Horvex said bitterly over the open channel. "Civilian mining equipment," Al-Rashid confirmed. "All legal. All registered. All completely in compliance with Council regulations." Her expression was serene. "The Council banned us from war. So we prepared for everything else." As Council ships moved into position between the two forces, as the battle's fury faded to tense standoff, Horvex understood with complete clarity what his species had awakened. Not warriors. Something more dangerous. A civilization that had spent 43 years preparing for war while technically maintaining peace, that had weaponized compliance itself, that had turned every restriction into an advantage. The humans had been banned from war. So they'd made everything else into warfare and waited patiently for someone to test them. The wait was over. The Council mediator's transmission reached both fleets simultaneously, her multitonal voice carrying the weight of galactic authority. "All forces will power down weapons and maintain current positions pending investigation. Any further hostilities will result in immediate Council sanctions." Commander Al-Rashid acknowledged the order professionally. Horvex began transmitting his compliance. Then his communications officer interrupted with 4 words that changed everything. "Hierarchy reinforcements just arrived." At the system's edge, 96 fresh Vorsham warships dropped out of hyperspace, their hulls unmarked by battle, their weapons fully armed. The Conquest Fleet's second wave, summoned weeks ago when Earth's defiance first became clear, had finally reached the battlefield. "This is High Commander Drexith to all Vorsham forces," a new voice boomed across military channels. "By order of the Hierarchy Supreme Council, this human infestation will be purged. Council mediation is rejected. All ships, attack formation." The Council mediator's protests were lost in the static as Drexith's fleet surged forward, ignoring diplomatic protocol, dismissing galactic law. The Vorsham had conquered 17 worlds. They would not be denied by mining equipment and legal technicalities. "Well," Lieutenant Chen Wei said aboard the Unyielding, watching the new contacts accelerate toward Earth. "So much for diplomacy." Al-Rashid studied the tactical display with the calm of someone who'd planned for exactly this scenario. "Ensign Beak, activate Protocol Endgame. Authorization code Al-Rashid 77 Victor." "Protocol Endgame confirmed," Beak responded, her fingers dancing across her console. "All stations acknowledging." Unmask in 3, 2, 1. Across the solar system, humanity dropped its final pretense. The civilian platforms revealed their true nature. Magnetic accelerator cannons that had been firing at partial capacity went to full military power. Defense stations dumped their camouflage protocols, revealing armor plating 3 times thicker than initial scans suggested. And from Earth itself, from orbital positions that had registered as commercial satellite clusters, 16 defensive platforms emerged from stealth mode, each one massing 20,000 tons, each one an orbital fortress disguised as telecommunications infrastructure. "Those are battle stations," Horvex whispered, watching the displays. "Military-grade defense platforms." "How did they hide?" "Orbital clutter," Al-Rashid answered over the open channel. "The Council monitors new construction. They don't track every satellite repositioning over 4 decades. We built these pieces, registered them as separate communication satellites, then assembled them in orbit over 20 years. Gradual. Patient. Invisible." The 16 fortresses opened fire simultaneously. Their primary weapons were experimental railguns, designed in secret, tested in the outer system disguised as mining operations, each one capable of accelerating projectiles to 0.95 light speed. The hypervelocity rounds crossed the distance to Drexitha's approaching fleet in heartbeats. For dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist, their hulls unable to process the kinetic energy transfer before structural failure propagated through every system. The tungsten penetrators continued through their targets, each round retaining enough velocity to cripple whatever ship had the misfortune of being behind the primary target. "Impossible," Drexith transmitted, his confidence fracturing. "No species has railgun technology at those velocities. The power requirements alone require a planetary power grid," Chief Engineer Kowalski answered from the unyielding. "Good thing Earth has one. Each fortress has a dedicated fusion reactor and capacitor banks the size of office buildings." His voice carried dark satisfaction. "You're not fighting a fleet. You're fighting an entire planet's industrial capacity." The deep space mining fleet engaged Drexitha's forces with synchronized precision. 23 warships that had spent decades pretending to mine asteroids now demonstrated what humanity had built in the outer dark. The TCSS Unyielding's mining laser carved through a Vorsham carrier, its fusion-driven beam reducing the kilometer-long vessel to glowing debris in 14 seconds. The TCSS Relentless deployed kinetic harpoons that punched through 3 destroyers in a single salvo. The TCSS Sovereignty used its trawling nets to capture 2 corvettes and drag them directly into an approaching cruiser's path. But the mining swarm was the true nightmare. 600 civilian vessels, each one operated by crews who'd spent their entire careers preparing for this moment, descended on Drexitha's fleet like predators that had finally spotted prey. Ore haulers rammed damaged ships at full thrust, their reinforced bows designed to crack asteroids proving equally effective against warship hulls. Processing platforms used their sorting lasers to slice through shield generators. Transport vessels deployed their cargo, chunks of refined metal accelerated to combat velocities, in devastating kinetic barrages. "They're everywhere," Drexitha's tactical officer reported, voice rising toward panic. "We can't establish fire control. They fight like a swarm," Horvex finished quietly, watching from his position in the surrounded remnants of the first wave. "Individual units, distributed command, no central weakness to exploit. Every ship an independent threat. Every crew cross-trained for combat." He'd spent the ceasefire studying the human tactics, understanding too late what his species faced. They built an entire civilization as a weapon and disguised it as commerce. The Council fleet attempted to restore order, their ships positioning between the combatants, their diplomatic channels broadcasting urgent ceasefire demands. Both sides ignored them. Drexith was committed to conquest. Humanity was committed to survival. The time for mediation had passed. "Target their command ship," Drexith ordered his fleet. Concentrate all firepower on the unyielding. Destroy their flagship and they'll. Al-Rashid's laugh cut across every frequency. You think we have a flagship? We have distributed command authority across 47 vessels and 63 defense platforms. Destroy the unyielding and Lieutenant Chen Wei assumes command from the relentless. Destroy that and Chief Engineer Kowalski takes over from Platform 7. We learned from studying your tactics, Drexith. Single points of failure are a species-level mistake we eliminated 3 decades ago. The human coordinator's words proved prophetic. Drexitha's fleet concentrated fire on the unyielding, plasma missiles and particle beams hammering its shields. The big mining platform took the punishment, its armor scarred but holding, its weapons never ceasing their devastating return fire. And while Drexitha's forces focused on one target, the rest of humanity's distributed military tore into them from every angle. The orbital fortresses fired again, their railguns operating in coordinated volleys that created overlapping fields of hypervelocity destruction. The mining swarm exploited every gap in Vorsham formations. The Deep Space Fleet positioned itself to cut off retreat vectors. And from Earth's moon, the heavy fusion platforms that had been approaching since Part 1 finally entered optimal range. Lunar Industrial Complex to all human forces, Captain Darius Kim transmitted from the Armstrong's Legacy. We have firing solutions on 37 high-value targets. Engaging now. The lunar platforms were the titans of humanity's civilian fleet, massive vessels built to crack open moons and harvest their cores. Their primary tools were fusion torches capable of generating temperatures matching stellar interiors, concentrated into cutting beams narrow enough to slice through planetary crust. Against starship armor, the effect was apocalyptic. A Vorsham dreadnought caught in a fusion beam simply melted, its hull transitioning from solid to liquid to plasma in 6 seconds. Another tried to evade and discovered the platform's secondary systems. Mining charges meant to fracture lunar rock, worked equally well as proximity mines. A third attempted to close range and engage directly, only to learn that equipment designed to grab moon-sized chunks of mass and redirect them could do the same to warships. This is not battle, Drexith transmitted, his voice hollow with understanding. This is extermination. You fight like a species that knew you were coming, Al-Rashid interrupted. Like a civilization that spent 43 years studying your tactics, your weapons, your strategy. Like people who understood that compliance meant preparation, not surrender. She paused. You see miners and merchants. We are. But we're also the most motivated military force in the galaxy. Because we're not fighting for conquest. We're fighting for our home. The battle's outcome was inevitable. Drexitha's 96 ships disintegrated against humanity's integrated defense network. The orbital fortresses maintained relentless fire. The mining swarm coordinated like a single organism. The Deep Space Fleet demonstrated that 43 years of engineering had created warships superior to anything the Vorsham hierarchy could field. And Earth itself, the planet the invaders had come to conquer, proved to be the deadliest weapons platform in the system. 23 minutes after Drexitha's arrival, his fleet was combat ineffective. 47 ships destroyed outright. 31 crippled beyond repair. The remainder scattered and fleeing, pursued by mining vessels that had no intention of allowing survivors to escape. All Vorsham forces, Al-Rashid broadcast on all frequencies. Final offer. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 60 seconds. The responses came in clusters. Ships broadcasting distress codes. Emergency beacons activating. Weapons powering down. In the end, 18 vessels from Drexitha's reinforcement fleet survived intact enough to surrender. Combined with Horvex's survivors, fewer than 90 ships remained from the hierarchy's 243-ship invasion force. Aboard his command vessel, Drexith stared at the tactical display showing his shattered fleet. We studied your species for years, he transmitted to Al-Rashid. Your compliance with council law was absolute. Your civilian commerce was transparent. How did we miss this? Because you saw what you wanted to see, al-Rashid replied. You saw pacifists who dismantled their military. You saw merchants who followed council regulations. You saw a species that accepted their place. Her voice hardened. You never saw what we were building in plain sight. Every tool with dual purpose. Every civilian trained for combat. Every system designed to weaponize compliance itself. The Council fleet finally established control, their warships surrounding the surrendered Vorsham forces. The Mediator's transmission carried new respect alongside her frustration. Commander al-Rashid, the Council demands a full accounting of your defensive systems. The scale of military preparation hidden within civilian infrastructure violates the spirit of. The spirit of what? Al-Rashid interrupted. The law that forced us to dismantle our protection? The regulations that left us defenseless against species like the Vorsham? She gestured at the debris field surrounding Earth, at the shattered remains of 2 invasion fleets. We followed every council regulation. We built no military spacecraft, we upgraded civilian vessels. We conducted no weapons research, we advanced industrial technology. We maintained no standing military, we cross-trained commercial crews. Her expression was steel. If the council doesn't like the results, perhaps they should write better laws. The Mediator had no response to that. Horvex requested a private channel. When al-Rashid accepted, his voice carried only exhausted respect. Your species is terrifying. Not because of your weapons. Because of your patience. 43 years of preparation. An entire civilization built around warfare disguised as commerce. You are apex predators pretending to be prey. No, al-Rashid corrected gently. We're prey that learn to fight back. There's a difference. She paused. Take a message to your hierarchy, Horvex. Earth is not helpless. Earth is not weak. And Earth will never surrender. If that makes us terrifying, perhaps your species should have considered that before invading our home. The aftermath came swiftly. Council investigators descended on Earth's system, documenting the defensive network, analyzing the civilian-military integration, attempting to determine what regulations had been violated. They found none. Humanity had followed every letter of Council law while violating its entire intent. The legal scholars would debate the implications for decades. Across the galaxy, the news spread through channels official and covert. The Vorsham hierarchy, conquerors of 17 worlds, had been shattered by a species banned from war. Their invasion fleets destroyed by mining equipment. Their superior technology defeated by industrial tools. The story seemed impossible until the evidence arrived: debris field analyses, combat recordings, surrendered ships with hull damage consistent with asteroid processing lasers and/or hauler impacts. In the Quilix Compact's military headquarters, intelligence officers updated their threat assessments. Sol System, Omega Classification. Approach with extreme caution. Species demonstrates unprecedented capacity for converting civilian infrastructure into military assets. The Dravani Collective's War Council reviewed their own plans for Terran expansion and quietly cancelled them. A species that could hide that much firepower in plain sight was not worth the risk. 43 species updated their diplomatic protocols regarding Earth. 17 embassies extended formal apologies for past dismissive treatment. The galactic perspective shifted overnight. Humans were no longer the compliant newcomers forced into pacifism. They were the civilization that had turned legal compliance into the galaxy's most dangerous trap. On the Unyielding's command deck, Commander Sarah al-Rashid watched the last Vorsham survivors being escorted to council custody. Lieutenant Chen Wei approached with casualty reports. Final count, ma'am. We lost 47 crew across the mining fleet. 2 orbital platforms sustained critical damage. Estimated 12,000 enemy casualties. He paused. We won. We survived, Al-Rashid corrected. And we sent a message. She looked at Earth, blue and beautiful and now provably lethal, hanging in the view screen. The Council banned us from war. They thought they'd neutered us. Instead, they gave us 43 years to prepare for the day someone tested whether compliance meant weakness. And now? Chief Engineer Kowalski asked. Al-Rashid smiled. Now the galaxy knows. Earth doesn't start wars. But we make absolutely certain we can finish them. She turned to her crew. Stand down from combat stations. Begin damage assessment and recovery operations. And send a message to every mining platform, every ore hauler, every civilian vessel that fought today, well done. You defended your home. You proved that humanity's strength isn't in warships or weapons. It's in our ability to turn anything into a weapon when survival demands it. Outside the viewport, the debris of 2 shattered fleets drifted in Earth's orbit, a monument to the species that had mistaken preparation for paranoia, patience for weakness, and compliance for surrender. Humanity had been banned from war 43 years ago. Today, they'd demonstrated they didn't need permission to defend themselves. The message would echo across the galaxy for generations. Don't underestimate the species that turns mining equipment into weapons and commercial vessels into warships. Don't mistake their compliance for weakness. And never, ever threaten their home. Earth had spoken. The galaxy had listened. And Commander Sarah Al-Rashid, watching the stars that humanity would now explore without fear, knew with absolute certainty that her species would never be defenseless again. The Council had banned humans from war. So humanity had made everything else into warfare, then waited with infinite patience for someone to test them. The wait was over. The lesson delivered. And the galaxy would remember.